These are the disappeared. And this is the gruesome, painstaking task of trying to locate those missing people. Luis von der Brede is a forensic anthropologist. Working from whatever records they can find, he and his colleagues locate the last remains of victims of Argentina's years of state terror, dig them up, and try to piece together the story of what happened to them and who they are.
This was on a common grave containing around 40 bodies. Most of them show the same pattern of injuries, is gunshot wounds in the skull. And the important thing was an official version about what happened. The official version say was a confrontation between the guerrillas and the army. I mean, most of our cases we found this kind of injuries, which means people executions.
Not all of these were people who were found in cemeteries. Some of them were people who were washed up on the beach.
There's around 60 bodies from people who were drawn by airplanes to the sea were found in the beaches in Argentina and in Uruguay.
Of the 60 bodies that have been found that were washed up on the sea, how do you know what happened to them?
Normally the hands are tied behind the bodies.
Their hands are tied behind their backs?
Behind the backs, yeah. They are wearing Argentine clothing. And also we see in some of the cases fractures, which are very common in people falling from some heights, which is typical sign of people at least falling from an airplane could be in this case.
We learned about the death flights, about people being thrown alive from planes. In the beginning, we thought this wasn't true. It's something so horrible that you can live with it, especially if you run the risk of being taken to those planes, right? So you tend to think like people used to think in Nazi concentration camps. No, it's not true. They're being taken to another camp. Or if you lived in a ghetto, you used to think, well, they're being transferred to Poland. They're being transferred to another country. It's not true. It couldn't be true. You can live with the belief that they're going to kill you for nothing.
These are some of the alleged terrorists the Argentine military wanted to eliminate. Everyone round this table today knows someone who disappeared. Maybe a close family member, a friend, a comrade. Most spent time in hiding or in prison. They are the lucky ones who survived. Then they were sympathizers or members of a group called the Montoneros. Certainly some of the Montoneros believed in the violent overthrow of society. Many, had they been in Europe, would have simply passed as radicals.
Well, I don't know how you think a revolutionary should look. The fact is that we and many of our comrades came from middle or upper middle class Catholic homes. It is because of this background that we were very sensitive to all the social problems. By the time we were 17, we were already going to villages in order to help the peasants. We were all trying to improve conditions and trying to make our society a little fairer.
Today this country has deep wounds. I think these wounds have affected my children the most. I fear for their future. We feared for our lives, of course. However, now I hope that my children will not have to go through what we went through. I hope that they fight for what they believe in, but I hope that they will be able to confront their enemies on a more equal footing.
We must have done things that were wrong if I analyze them from now. But at that time, I don't think there was another way of achieving our goal or giving everybody in Argentina the right to education, the right to health, the right to having a good job. I don't think we were terrorists at all.
Captain Hector Verges, formerly of the Argentine Army, loves horses. He was once a champion show jumper. Captain Verges was also an interrogator during the Dirty War.
I admit that from time to time we did carry out rather intense interrogations. We did it to people when we needed information quickly. I once heard someone say, "A strong interrogation is justified when it saves lives." In other words, a small crime in order to prevent a larger crime. If we follow that notion, I think that strong interrogations are permissible. And I think in times of war, they are justified.
So does Verges admit that he was part of a state terrorist apparatus?
The state has a monopoly on power. The state doesn't commit terrorist acts. The state at that time chose to act in the way that it did, and the people permitted it. The other important forces in the country, the press, the church, the unions, and business, allowed it to happen.
In my opinion, the criminal methods used by the state were unacceptable, and these methods should be referred to as state terrorism. There were very few people who committed abhorrent crimes, war crimes, and crimes against humanity.
Argentina's army junta eventually collapsed in 1983, but by then up to 30,000 Argentinians had died at the hands of its forces. When he became head of the army 8 years later, General Martin Balsa apologized on behalf of the army for the dirty war. But Argentina is still a country suffering from the years of violence.
Que no han cicatrizado, que no están cerradas.
The wounds are still open. One of the things that is preventing these wounds from healing is the inability to say what happened to the people who disappeared.
El no poder dar respuesta de qué pasó con los desaparecidos.
This question cannot be answered because the Commander-in-Chief of the Army in 1983 ordered all documents that dealt with the war against the subversives to be destroyed before the armed forces handed over power to the democratically elected government. This is why the wounds will take a long time to heal.
Las heridas van a tardar mucho en cicatrizar.